Welcome to Design Downtime, the podcast where we celebrate the joys of living a balanced creative life. I'm your host, Guy Siegel, a design director in Toronto, Canada, and I invite you to join me on this journey as we redefine what it means to be a successful design professional. Let's break free from the shackles of hustle culture and embrace the full spectrum of human experience, because life is too precious to be spent only in pursuit of productivity. Today, I'm thrilled to talk to Erika Hall. Erika is the co-founder of Mule Design Studio and Mule Books, and the author of Just Enough Research and Conversational Design, as well as the forthcoming The Business Model is the Grid. Her primary professional interests are design and communication strategy, collaboration, and evidence-based decision-making. She is based in San Francisco and used to fly around the world giving talks, but now she does everything remotely and really only travels as far as she can ride her bike. Erika, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Guy. It's fantastic to be here talking to you.
It's fantastic having you. And you want to talk to us about the very common topic of drawing pictures of chickens.
It's not uncommon, I think. There are more chickens than people by a factor of 2 or 3. I used to know, I think maybe 33 billion chickens on the planet. And I paint them one at a time.
Okay, so the first question is always the origin question. How did it start?
It started really because I've been working on this book, and let's see, in 2021, after we gave up our studio in North Beach, I got my own little workspace, and I said, I'm going to get this space and do a little sabbatical and work on this book. And I didn't really feel like it. What I felt like doing was painting, which is something I've done like off and on throughout my life. I've got artists in my family. And because it was the middle of 2021, I said, I have permission to just do this, right? I can always get back to the worky work. And I really just got back into painting, and I started painting scary toys and moldy food and spiders. I would go through these. I found that there would be one subject that I would just paint for a while. Rotary phones I really enjoyed. And I sort of kept doing this and kind of got back into it. And primarily like water-based media, because I like oil paint and I like everything about oil painting, except it's time consuming. It's time consuming and it's expensive, and it takes more patience, and I haven't been in a real high patience mindset. And, watercolor and gouache and things like that they're inexpensive, they're portable, and that's kind of the place. And really, yeah, it's really fast. You can paint really fast when you have a few minutes. And so that's what I was doing. Like my rotary phone series, I really enjoyed for some reason, just like physical objects. I did all these paintings of old telephones I really liked. But then I would get stuck. I started to just get stuck. I'm like, well, what should I paint? And I would spend all this time thinking about it. And Mike, my partner who has an MFA in painting, said, you just have to pick something. It doesn't matter what you paint. It matters how you paint it. And it could be anything. And I thought, okay, that's good MFA having advice. And he hates it when I describe it like that. But I'm like, sure, why not? And at the same time, so just about a year ago, so I have this older dog, and he had a little digestive issue, and I started feeding him this like chicken and rice diet. He was really into that. And I thought, maybe I'll just, now that he's older, I'll just start cooking his food. And like, we don't eat chicken. And all of a sudden I found myself like cooking a lot of chicken for my stupid little dog. And I thought, this is sort of unfair. How is my dog at the top of the food chain? I said, people really take chickens for granted. It's the most generic food, right? You hear things taste like chicken. And I said, chickens are actually, they're like little dinosaurs. And I feel because I am sacrificing so many chickens to feed my stupid little dog who can't hunt for himself, right? I need to really honor chickens. I'm going to see chickens. I'm going to paint portraits of chickens. And I found a format I liked, like this 7x7 square paper. And all of a sudden, once I chose those parameters, I could suddenly just produce so many paintings of chickens. It was like, I can't say it cured my ADHD because I understand that the flip side is hyperfocus. But all of a sudden, like, I get horrible writer's block, but I can always paint a chicken. And that really, throughout last year, kept me like weirdly really grounded because whatever was going on, like I could paint a chicken. And then we started hanging them up on a string in our kitchen because even though I have a ton of space, like here at the studio, and I have a whole home office, I paint chickens at the kitchen table. It's just where I do it. Like I used to paint some here, but chickens happen at the kitchen table. We have like a little diner booth, like one of those retro diner booth kind of tables. And I sit there and I paint my chicken. And it's not one a day. It's maybe one every 2-3 days, but it's a lot. And then have them all hanging up. And because they're portraits, the painter David Hockney said everything is a landscape or a still life or a portrait. And that is and I might be getting the quote out of order, but that's a deceptively, I think, kind of profound statement about painting because it's like, it's choosing how you see your subject. And chickens are usually either still life, like it's a cooked chicken or something, or they're part of a landscape. And I'm like, no, I am painting portraits of chickens. I'm going to see these chickens and paint these chickens. And because I was making all of these like close-up chicken faces, I felt like I was making an analog social network of chickens that made me really happy. So it made me happy for a couple of reasons. One, I could look at all of these chickens I painted and like really feel that even though there were other things I wasn't getting done that I felt like I should get done, I'm like, wow, I've painted a lot of chickens. The other thing is like, they're really colorful. And so I walk into my kitchen and it's like, they're all my friends. I realize that all of us have gone a little bit insane following lockdown and living through this pandemic. And I guess this is my variety of insane, is that I've made a lot of fake chicken friends. Yeah, so that's the origin of it. And now I have 250 chicken paintings or something I've done. I don't know, something like that. I think I've lost count. And they've been in a couple shows. So there you go.
So this is your sourdough bread.
Yeah. I never got into bread making, but yeah, painting became my thing.
So the rotary phones, the spiders, the scary toys, were they all based on models or were they from your imagination or any sort of like a reference picture?
Mostly from photography. The moldy food was often based on cleaning out the fridge. I mean, mold is really cool. Mold is really interesting as a kind of life form. There are some artists who do really interesting mold-based things, but mostly it's finding a photo reference and painting from that.
In the chickens, the same thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would love to have a couple little chickens kind of wandering around my apartment, but I started with Creative Commons photos on Flickr. And also, I've got a few friends who have chickens and they send me photos of their chickens and some of those. And so then I started kind of running out. So I got an account on a stock photography site and I find stock photography of chickens. And it's really been fun because there's a lot of it. I'd say the other thing about stock photography, it's become really clear like how much so-called generative AI is not going to replace stock photography because the specificity is wild. And I can find chickens from all over the world. And so I've started, because I browse this stock photography site so much, I've started to get a sense for like, this is what the chickens in Finland are like. This is what the chickens in Germany are like. This is what chickens in Thailand are like. So I've discovered new chicken varieties that are maybe more uncommon in the US. There's an all black Indonesian chicken. There's a Swiss chicken. I didn't realize what it was. I'd done a few paintings of this one kind with sort of a puffy head. And some people thought it was like a Polish chicken or a Houdan, but it turns out it's an Appenzeller Spitzhauben, which is a Swiss chicken that's quite attractive. And people who have them have told me that they're very friendly, because the other thing that happens when I paint chickens and post the pictures of chickens online is people who love chickens like find me and we talk about chickens. So that's this other thing. And so I've learned a lot about chickens too.
When you paint chickens, you have the subject, you have a flat picture, and then you have the result, which is, I've seen your paintings and they're full of personality. How do you bring that personality out in your painting?
Well, thank you. And see, they're portraits of chickens, and getting that chicken personality. I think it comes from really, like I said, the project is about seeing chickens. And I think this is where, especially people who are maybe insecure about, people get weird about their ability to draw. And this is why I think Wendy McNaughton, like her projects are really amazing to just get people to draw and to paint and to do visual art. And I think this is also the reason why people are drawn to some of these tools, is this feeling of, oh, I want this end product, and I am frustrated with my skills. But the thing I would say about the visual arts is it's about seeing. And so what I do is I really I look at the chicken and I try not to start painting until I feel like I've really seen that chicken's personality, and they're more or less I would say trying to be realistic or whatever, more expressionistic chickens. I don't know. But I make sure, and the ones that I feel less happy with are the ones where I started rushing without really just perceiving the chicken and considering the chicken and considering how I want to represent it. And it's just, so there's so much of it that's just before I even start making any kind of mark, it's thinking about the chicken. And that's why. And I think they're really colorful and full of personality also, just because things are kind of bleak right now. And I like the fact that chickens don't know what's going on. And they have a lot of different expressions and moods. And like I said, the reason for this project is to get people to stop taking chickens for granted, because we consume so many of them. So think about the chicken as a chicken. And so I think it's that spirit, right? Where the point of doing this to me is consider the chicken.
This is really good, because one of my favorite essays on art is talking about how art take something that we take for granted or we see and we don't even consider the context, and takes it out of it. So you become aware of the context that you see that thing. And I think your paintings are a really great example of that, because we're looking at it not as, oh, this is food, this is something that we barely think of, this is where I get my eggs. No, this is a creature with personality.
It's a being, it's an individual life form. And they do have personalities. And so it's been really fun to talk to people. I had chickens briefly growing up, and I enjoyed that, but I don't think we named them. And they were sort of they were more of a collective than real individuals, and I was a kid too. But talking to people about their chickens' personalities is really fun, because they really do. You see people holding them and petting them. And a recent category, subcategory of stock photography I've found is men holding chickens. And it's really I encourage people, especially if you're feeling stuck or bummed out. And I think looking at AI images is part of that, reinforces this sameness. And you just sort of start to get this ick, artificial reality regurgitated images feeling. And then if you go and you look at these photography sites and you see the specificity, and I really think like you see real people, like there's bad stock and all of that, but you can start to quickly find photos that people took of anything, again, all over the world. And so I found these photos, and they recommend, like on iStock, they recommend more like this. And so it's like, if I look at one photo, I found one photo of like a redheaded Dutchman holding a chicken who's a farmer. And it recommended all of these other pictures of like men holding chickens. And for some reason, like this is like, it's a very pleasing image because it's like, oh, look, because they really care. You're seeing these men who care about their chickens. And I think that's a real corrective for a lot of the images of, say, masculinity we're getting presented to us. It's like, oh, a man who cares about a chicken and they're holding them. Sometimes they're cuddling them. Sometimes they're holding them up over their heads. Yeah, and they have this look in their face where you can tell, like, this is a person who, because these are real farmers, and you can tell, like, this is a human being who cares, even if they're raising them for food, for meat, for eggs, whatever. They respect the chickens that they're holding. And so you can browse all these photos of real humans, like in real contexts, having human feelings. And I think you see like, oh, it's men who care about chickens. They're out there.
So that leads us to your website where you display those chickens. Tell me how that came up.
That happened pretty quickly. I'm trying to remember how soon, because I was thinking like, okay, I've got these paintings. It'd be funny to just have a collection. Oh, because the other thing that I was thinking about, so there was this artist, this British artist, Louis Wain, who painted cats. I first saw one of his images because I grew up in LA and I was a huge Oingo Boingo fan as a kid in LA. And I saw them in concert, and I always remembered this one sweatshirt that I couldn't afford to buy because I was a broke teenager with this cat on it. And I'm like, oh, I always thought like, oh, that cool. You know, like if you see some concert merch and you're like, oh, I wish I'd gotten that. And then much later, like only in the last few years, I found out that was a Louis Wain cat, and it's actually a really common image. And it was just that Danny Elfman was a big Louis Wain fan. And there's a Benjamin Cumberbatch biopic and all of that. And so at the beginning of last year, I said, my aspiration is now to be the Louis Wain of chickens. And so to that end, I'm going to make a website. And I looked at all the various domains, and the top level domains that are available now are wild. It's just a bummer that Amazon is squatting book because I'm not even using it. But .skin is out there. There are a lot of, for skincare, there are a lot of weird ones. But I found that chicken.pics was available. And I said, that's an amazing URL. And I don't know about you. I don't know if you have purchased a lot of notional URLs over your life, but I have. But I got chicken.pics and then just whacked together a site in Squarespace like really fast because they just have this like gallery widget and it's all these square pictures and my chickens were square. And I said, great, now I have a website where people could just go and look at pictures of chickens. It's in the name. There's not really anything to buy. It's just chicken.pics. And then about a month ago, I thought, you know what? I want to create a site where people can kind of compare chickens. And I had a friend who wanted to learn some programming framework, some development framework. I forget which one. And I suggested this. I was just in the group chat. I said, hey, what would be the easiest way to do this? And he said, oh, I'll just build that because I want to learn some stuff. And so now there's Clickins. So if you go to clickins.chicken.pics, you're presented with 2 paintings of chickens and an adjective, and you just click on the one that's more, whatever that adjective is. It's total nonsense. It doesn't save any data. It doesn't do anything. But hey, if you're on your laptop or your phone and you need to click on something, but want to stop like doom scrolling, that's a thing you can do.
And it also just reinforces you looking at chickens as something that's more than what you think about them, right? If you're thinking, okay, which one of these two chickens are more, what are some of the adjectives you have there? Lackadaisical.
Lackadaisical, exactly. Or giddy, or what are the other ones? Energetic.
Rambunctious.
Rambunctious. Shrewd. Yeah, I put in a link so people can suggest adjectives as you have. Yeah. Dependable, debonair, powerful, caustic, righteous. Yeah. And so you really think about them. And I've heard that some people who've tried this site really like take it really seriously and really think like, which one of these chickens is more pedantic, like, and think of a whole little story. So yeah, because that's what the web, like when I first got excited about web technology, it was because of people making websites and linking to other websites. And I also thought, I need to, if I'm going to be like shaking my fist at the clouds, like back in my day, the web was fun. I need to do my part because I think more people should just make stupid websites,
Yeah, that are not for profit.
Yeah.
You mentioned that every few days you paint a new chicken. What triggers you saying, oh, I need to go and paint a chicken?
It's kind of my default before dinner is to sit down because I'm in the kitchen to sit down and paint a chicken. So it really just is like, I have an aspiration to at least work on a chicken every day because they're usually single session chickens. Sometimes they get a little more complicated. So I try to at least work on a chicken every day when I get home. I sit down, I'm like, okay, chicken time. And I can at least spend sometimes when I only have, like if it's my night to make dinner and I only have 10 or 15 minutes, sometimes those are the best chickens. I'm not overthinking. I'm just like getting a chicken out there. And then sometimes when I say, okay, I'm going to spend a couple hours and really they get overworked and they're not as good. So yeah, it's a practice. I also I run and I bike and stuff like that. And if you ever train for anything, you get the sense of like the important part is you just do the thing. And some days you'll have good days and some days you'll have kind of mediocre days or bad days, but getting out there and making it a practice is the most important part. And so I have a chicken practice, and it's wild because I've never in my life, like I mentioned, the ADHD and the procrastination, I have never done anything this consistently in my life, except maybe like one time when I trained for a triathlon or something, I was really on it. And so if I feel like bummed out about like not getting something done, I'm like, I made all those chickens, and that I have this visible representation of my ability to just make some stuff. So yeah, I recommend it. Just do a thing. Just do a thing.
Was it ever scary or overwhelming painting all those chickens while living with someone with an MFA, a quote unquote, a real artist?
Oh God, Mike, this question would crack him up. No, the worst thing, because I've already had the experience of being in a household with people writing a book at the same time. That is terrible. That is truly terrible, especially because like Mike can just sit down and write and it's really horrible and ungodly. Like he's just like, he would describe it differently. He just like sits down and writes. And so writing at the same time, terrible. But like, he has a painting studio and paints and all that. And it's totally different and it's fine. No, I don't, weirdly. And I'm trying to really understand this. And I'm trying to figure out how to make everything a chicken, because I still don't totally understand why this has no stress for me at all. I do not understand. Like, how is this possible? Even like other things I enjoy. So that's my just thinking about my own brain and everything. And like, why is this unlike anything else, even unlike other hobbies or free time activities or work things? It's like, I can always paint a chicken. And it's like, how do I take that and apply whatever's going on there to writing? I would love to be able to figure out how to make writing a chicken. And I'm still trying to figure that out. But yeah, it's like I have no stress about it. I've got no comparing myself to other people. Like I look at other artists, and sometimes I did a really fun thing last year on Blue Sky where I got a little stuck with like how to paint chickens. And so I would ask people at Blue Sky, okay, name an artist and I will paint a chicken in the style of that artist. And I could tell, like, I had fun with that. It didn't stress me out. And I would always think, I would look at the chicken and think, how would Francis Bacon see a chicken? How would Patrick Nagel see a chicken? How would Monet see a chicken? And I think that's very different from, again, I'll go back to the AI tools that are not exactly like that in pattern matching. It's not about seeing, it's about producing something in the same style. And that's what I think the real difference is. And that's what I would encourage anybody who feels self-conscious about picking up a pen or pencil or a paintbrush to just say it's about seeing, and it's really fun and it's really satisfying, and it doesn't really matter. The output doesn't matter as much. Like it does and it doesn't. But the output is just a record of what you saw. And when you start noticing things, that's the exciting part.
This is wonderful. What sort of feedback have you been receiving about these paintings?
Let's see. When I ask Mike, none. He's like, no way. I'm not going near it. I'm like, which one's your favorite chicken? And he's like, no. But other people will tell me like, oh, I like this one, or yeah, they get different responses, or that one scares me. But they're mostly happy, unless I'm really sometimes I try to make a scary one. I had a fun, and I think part of the reason I did click-ins was so people would give feedback. But again, feedback that didn't matter, because it's not like which chicken is more beautiful, which chicken is more proficiently painted. It's like which chicken is more pedantic, right? It has nothing to do with the execution. But I did have a show. There's a pet supply store. See, it all comes back to the dog. There's a pet supply store called Animal House, and I adopted Rupert at an event right at that store, and it's right around the corner. And Megan, who runs it, really likes the chickens. And so last year for an art walk, like a Thursday art walk, she said, hey, do you want to have a show of chickens at the store? And I said, yes, but they won't be for sale. And so we went and hung up in a store. We very quickly, because it was just for a couple hours and all the other merchandise was still in place. So we hung up 150 chickens or something. And then people came in to look at them. And then they would ask me, they would ask to buy one. And I would say they're not for sale. And there's some people, like this one woman, she said, I want that one. And she pointed to this one chicken. And I just said, they're not for sale. And she looked like she'd been slapped, right? Like, what? I don't understand. I'm in a store. You have art. Is the goal of your art not to sell your art? And so refusing to sell chickens to people has also been fun. But I've relented on that a little bit. But that was a funny experience, because it's also like, just look at them. They're here for you to look at. And the fact that was sort of confusing to people, most people were kind of like, oh, okay. But they sort of had to deal with that. It was sort of confrontational, right? To go into a store and see something that you couldn't buy was sort of confrontational. And so that was fun. That was like the performance art aspect. But then I had some in another show where they were for sale. And so because again, I have so many now, I'm starting to relent on selling them.
Erika, where can people find you?
Let's see. I'm on Blue Sky. That's where people could find me in general. I'm on LinkedIn, where people can find me professionally. MuleDesign.com, still kicking. And then chicken.pics to see the chickens, and click on the click-ins. It's all there.
Highly recommended. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This is a fun conversation. I love talking about chickens.
This is all for this episode of Design Downtime. Thank you for joining me. And until next time, I hope you enjoy your downtime.